Welcome to the Deeper Into Movies podcast. My name is Stephen T. Hanley. I'm the founder and lead curator of Deeper Into Movies. We're a pop-up cinema based in London and New York. Today on the podcast, I am joined by filmmaker, documentarian Kathryn Ferguson about her incredible and powerful documentary about the life and career of Sinéad O'Connor. I really got into Sinéad O'Connor 4 years ago. I was really late to the game. I mentioned this in the podcast, but there was one performance that I saw that just blew me away. And then I went on a deep dive and I bought her biography. I was super excited about the documentary. I've been speaking to Kathryn on Instagram for ages, trying to get a preview copy. Finally got one. Thank you, Paramount. And yeah, this is a fantastic documentary, which it's not even like a reassessment. It's just telling it like it is, the real story of Sinead basically being one of the first people to be cancelled for speaking out about what she believed in. And these were powerful topics that a celebrity, and especially a female celebrity, it wasn't deemed the thing to be talking about. And these were big things, you know, the Catholic Church, pedophilia, abortion rights in Ireland, the war, the treatment of black artists, heavy stuff. Me and Kathryn get into all of this. We discuss Sinead's career, her impact, her cancellation, and now hopefully her comeback. So this is me talking to Kathryn Ferguson. How's it going?
Okay. I'm okay. It's a wee bit nuts. It's been a bit of a whirlwind these past few weeks, but it's look, no complaints. It's fantastic.
No, you're deep into junket promo mode.
Yeah. Yeah. First time. I feel very much a rookie working out how this all works, but yeah, it's great. It's great.
Did you study film? What was your background like?
Very good question. No, I actually, what did I do? I actually did fashion. I went to CSM and did a BA in fashion communication way back in 2001, and then fell into film actually through that. I got very into fashion film really. I'd say in like 2005 onwards, and then kind of fell quite quickly out of love of that, and with that, and really started to really want to explore documentary and what people had to say, and actually, try and train as a filmmaker. You know, but I then decided to go back to a master's at the RCA in it was actually another communication course, but I just did film in that course for 2 years, and it was my graduation film from that course, Mather, which is Irish for mother, that really started this whole wild process that led to making this feature. So we can talk a bit about that if you like.
And who were you into? What directors were you inspired by? What films were you obsessing over?
Oh, interesting. Well, I was hugely into. I remember at that point. I remember at the RCA, I was very into my Catholicism and my and iconography. Fellini, Roma was a big one. I suppose I loved. I loved the visual style of a director like Fellini, but then I equally was really inspired as a documentarian when I saw Clive Barnard's The Arbor.
Yeah.
And this idea of the hybrid doc being something to explore. And I think really it was at that point that my head was turned, and I thought, crikey, how could we try and make work that's, definitely pushing the boundaries of documentary slightly more, and bringing in scripted elements as well. Not that this film has them, but that was definitely something that hugely inspired me, and is something I'd like to try for my next film. So
I rewatched recently. Have you ever seen Carol Morley's The Alcohol Years?
no, I'd love to. No,
This
I
is
haven't.
a film where
She's amazing.
she's going back through all her teens and 20 somethings when she definitely was drinking really out of control, and going back and speaking to all the people she interacted with, hooked up
Wow.
with, embarrassed herself with throughout that entire time. It's really interesting because there is a point when someone says, do you really want to hear this? Do you really want me to tell you how bad and messy and chaotic you were in that time? And then also flipping it and saying, is this like a vanity piece? Is this just some
Mm.
psychotic kind of egomaniac trip of you
Mm-hmm.
making a movie about
Mm-hmm.
yourself and listening to everyone talk about you for 15 hours of tape time?
It's like the world's worst hangover ever
Yeah.
ever recorded.
Yeah, because it is like that. I remember someone asked me a weird question about if you found two books of like all the nice things someone says about you and all the bad things, which one would you go to? And I was like, oh, the good one, definitely. I don't think I could handle just being torn apart and be told how, annoying I am or something. That would just be.
Oh Christ, absolutely. Good God. No, I'd love to see that. I haven't actually seen it, but yeah, she's amazing as well. Yeah, I mean, yeah, brilliant.
Did you have a eureka moment or a moment where you thought, okay, I want to make a documentary about Sinead? Was there a definitive
To be
moment you can pinpoint?
honest, yeah, and it was when I was an early teenager. Honestly, I'd say the seeds for this film were really sowed in the early '90s when I was a young teenager growing up in Belfast. I'd actually been introduced to The Lion and the Cobra, her first album, by my dad in Belfast in the '80s when I was a child, and it became bizarrely the soundtrack to my childhood. He would play it on repeat as we drove through rainy, troubles-ridden Northern Ireland. So it became this very visceral experience, listening to her music. But it was when I became a teenager myself in the early '90s, and discovered her second album. And I think by that point, like I could really see her and hear her, and me and my friends just obviously thought she was the best thing we'd ever seen. And as young Irish women, we certainly needed her. So yeah, she was a huge icon of ours, but then very quickly after I feel like we found her, she was completely destroyed on this global stage. So it was a very demoralizing thing to kind of go through, to find this like icon of yours when you're a teenager, and then just witness that was, it really left a huge dent on me. And I think then that was a story that just stuck with me for decades. I've always remained a fan of hers and her music, and always, was very interested in what she was up to. But I really think, yeah, the origins for this film began then. And then, yeah, it wasn't until 2011 when I was at the RCI doing this master's that I made this film, as I mentioned, Matter, and I reached out to admittedly this film is quite a strange experimental visual number, short film, all about similar themes that are in the film, Catholicism and its control over women of Ireland. And I reached out to her then managers and asked if I could get access to her stems because I wanted to see if I could deconstruct them and turn them into a score for this short. And I was, very happy that they agreed. And I then sent them this graduation piece just to show them what I'd done out of courtesy. And then they came back about a year and a half later and asked me to direct her first music video in 15 years for her track, Force and Vine. So that's when I got to meet her. And that was 2013. So it was this bizarrely organic process that kind of began way back when, and then really started to, gain some traction. Yeah, 2013. And then, by meeting her, of course, the fires were stoked even further. I was like, by that point, I was making films and I was edging into documentary work. And yeah, I just thought, good God, why hasn't there been like a cinematic feature doc made about this incredible person, and talk to anyone that would listen. You could bear me going on about it for the following 5 years, and then it wasn't until early 2018 I met the film's co-writers and producers, Michael Malley and Eleanor Entwich, and they just really shared the same passion and vision for the project. And I finally had people to hear me out, and together we just sat down and really worked out the angle and put a one pager together, which I then brought back to the team that I'd worked with in the music video, and that's really how it all started.
Wow, because I'm always so fascinated by documentary filmmakers, especially for the time and endurance and patience and back and forth that it takes to make a documentary. A few years ago, there was a film student who told me he wants to make a 10-minute short documentary about my movie night. And I was like, really? No, you don't want to do that. It's going to take so long. It's going to be so expensive, and there's going to be interviews, and you're going to have to. I know, I kind of watch some documentaries. I know how you assemble them, and you're going to need clips and footage to pad out the voices, and there's talking heads. And I was like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to waste time on me. And I was like, I just talked to him. Well, he did do it, but he wasn't unwavered.
I
But
like to see that.
like my friend Jeff, who made the amazing Devil and Daniel Johnston documentary,
Oh yeah, phenomenal.
like 10 years going through archive
Yeah.
footage, and
Hmm.
the labels and filmmakers and producers just saying, this is just a crazy guy making music on a out of tune guitar on a tape deck. There's no, long before now, he's adored and he's a DIY icon, but
Absolutely. I think all of it, like really any documentary is a huge passion project, and ours was the same. I mean, ours bizarrely only took 4 years. We were prepared for it to take longer, but for going into it, obviously we had no backers. I had to convince people that I was the right director to make this film,
mhm.
given that I hadn't made a feature before, there was all that to contend with. Um, but bizarrely, once we got moving, things moved quite fast, which yeah, we weren't expecting them to. And to be honest, we could have nearly even got it finished in 3 years, but COVID happened and put a stop to that. But we had to, fund it from the ground up as well. And we just, had to do all of the things that documentarians have to do, all of the applications to the national funds and pitching at documentary festivals and all of that stuff we did. But like it was worth it, and we managed to keep the film very independent, which is, exactly what we really hoped we could do and needed to do, to be honest, given the story and the artists that we were exploring. So it worked out well, thank God.
And how did you decide to frame it within that? Is it a 4-year period?
Five, five
Five.
years. Yeah, 1987 to 93. Well, to be honest, from the very beginning, we'd always planned to keep it very, very focused because, even starting any type of dive into Sinead O'Connor and her life and her story, there's so much there. So to be able to tell a film, like to be able to properly do a deep dive and tell a film with any type of context and rigorous analysis. We had to go very, very tight on our focus. Really, Sinead deserves 10 documentaries, and I hope
Yeah.
that they'll all be made about her after this one. But to be able to, I mean, I suppose this film in many ways is like a foundation that's being laid. It's trying to like really just go back to the start and look at the cause and effect of what happened and why she did what she did. Because I think there's so much out there that people just don't understand about any of it, and we wanted to be able to try and clear up a lot of the ideas that a lot of them had obviously been constructed very well by the press. But we wanted to try and, unpeel all of these preconceptions about her and really be able to look at depth into one, the Ireland that she came from, which is critical to the story.
Hmm.
Looking at how she, her rise to fame, which is so fascinating because, her sense of self and standing up for what she believes in certainly didn't start whenever she was a global superstar. It was there from the very, very beginning, from when she was a teenager. And, she's a lot of battles she has to fight even to get to this point that she gets to. But then, most importantly, we wanted to look at how she used her voice when she was this global superstar. And then the unbelievable backlash, which is really shocking, I think, even to today's audiences when they see the film. There's like audible gasps in the audience when you get to that part of the film because it's astounding to see this young 24-year-old woman being absolutely torn to shreds, in the way that she is. So yeah, I don't think I answered your question very well, but
No,
really it
you
was to be
did.
able
Yeah.
to deep dive into this part of the story. We needed to keep us tightly focused.
Yeah, I remember when I saw her in the 90s, I didn't get it at all.
No.
I had Irish parents, and I was in that shitty teenage years where I rejected anything Irish. I thought she was just a weird person with a shaven head on the Late Late Show. And then obviously as you get older, you're looking back, and I remember David Holmes put on his Facebook that he went to Shane MacGowan's 60th birthday, and he said the You're the One performance is the best thing he's ever seen.
Yeah.
And I watched that and I was like, this is incredible. Yeah. And it was such a cinematic moment because she walks on stage, the place is so silent. And I think there is that air of, is she going to fuck this up? Is she going to say something crazy? Where is this going to go? And the second she starts singing, the whole place is like, she still got it. Absolutely. And it was such an amazing moment. And then when I started going back, and then I went on like a Google dive looking for her photos, and I was like, this face is amazing. This is the most incredible face in all her photo shoots. And I think Peaches in the documentary says it better when she's like, she's basically 30 years ahead of her time in her fashion, in what she's embracing, the kind of the masculine, feminine, the punk looks, the leather jackets. Absolutely. That amazing photo shoot where she's pregnant and she's 9 months pregnant and she's wearing a t-shirt that just says wear a fucking condom. So great. So ahead of her time. But what is it they say? It's not always great to be the first at something.
Well, this is it. And I think it was a very isolated place to be, actually. I think particularly with her, speaking out in her activism, she wasn't talking about palatable, cool subjects. It was really hard to hear, hard hitting things that she felt very passionate about, which obviously accumulates in, with the iconic Saturday Night Live performance where she rips up a picture of the Pope and all hell breaks loose as a result. This was not stuff. It's not like today where I suppose we expect a lot of our celebrities and expect them in many ways to speak out and use the platform. Really at that point, she was one of the few, especially as a female superstar, to really, stand up there and put her head above the parapet. But it was not a welcome. It was not a welcome voice. People really, really didn't want to hear it, particularly around the sexual abuse scandals in the church. It was just really too early. And I just don't think it wasn't out in the consciousness enough for people to really, as you say, know what she was talking about or knowing what that action was about. So I think it left people quite confused. Which then, of course, people are able to look back on now with a much clearer perspective of why she did what she did. But at that point, I think it left people very confused. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you mentioned the David Holmes thing as well. He, I think, has just produced her new album. And I think it was based on that meeting.
Oh, amazing.
That night. It's meant to be unbelievably good.
When I was on my YouTube deep dive, when I rediscovered Sinead, I saw the interview of her and Arsenio Hall on his talk show.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a classic 90s American talk show. But Sinead doesn't really do light talk show chats, does she?
Yeah.
She's completely outspoken, and I think 3 minutes in, she's already spoken about apartheid and why she's not attending the Grammys because your success shouldn't be measured by your
Oh yeah.
record sales. She's talking about the war. She's talking about how brutal and horrible humans can be to one another.
Yeah.
Just not the typical talk show chat. And then I
No.
was reading the comments and everyone's like, wow, look at this woman. She's so brilliant. She's so outspoken, and she's still only 24.
Yeah.
It's just amazing looking back as to how strong her moral compass was. And she would not bend. She would not pander. She won't do light TV chat. She's not going to drop an anecdote or a funny story, whatever. If she's got the platform, she's going to be speaking about what is important.
It is incredible, but I think the key thing, that I can say from just looking through all of, hours and hours of the archive and spending so much time with this story, Sinead was a counterculture artist who
Yeah.
really was nonconformist, anti-establishment, very punk actually in her ethos. He then gets, catapulted into this super fame realm. And,
Yeah.
she arrived there, and I suppose when you're that famous, which she was for about 4 or 5 years, she's
Yeah.
that famous, I suppose you're expected to be grateful or play the game or, at least do what you're meant to be, what's expected of you. And there was just nothing that anybody could do to tell Sinead O'Connor, how to be or what to say or how to act. And I think that's where the real rub comes in, because
Yes.
she's coming from this place. She's not really meant to be there in the world that she lands into. And I think that's where it all gets really, really messy, to be honest. Looking back at it, because that certainly isn't, where she saw herself as an artist. It's incredible that she did become so absurdly famous, in 1990, but it certainly doesn't seem like it did her any good.
No, well, there's an amazing bit in the Arsenio interview I just watched where he asked her something, and then she just said something like, well, you know me, so not sugarcoating things or not telling the truth isn't really my thing.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm known for speaking the truth, so.
Yeah, there's no message.
And one of the things that I had to remind myself when watching it is this was pre-social media. This sounds so obvious, but yeah, Sinead didn't have an Instagram or a Twitter where she could speak out about what she was fighting for or against. And the only way to get your voice heard was to go on, cheesy talk shows or go on the Late Late Show where Gay Byrne was really condescending to her. It's just wild looking back at that time and how little of a voice people had against the mainstream media.
Well, it really was. And actually, yeah, like Skin says it really clearly in the documentary, as you say, it was, before social media. And in those days, if the press weren't writing about you, if you weren't appearing on talk shows, if you weren't out there and being asked to be part of things, you may as well be dead, or
Yeah.
gone, because there was no way for people to access you or your music. And that's essentially what happens to Sinead. It's like this mass cancelling, that a very kind of violent mass cancelling that happens very fast, um, and obviously goes on to have huge effects. That's right.
Did you do 2 days long interviews with her?
Yeah, we really wanted Sinead to narrate this film. Yeah, it was 2 days at the end of 2019, just a few months before the first lockdown. But really, for me, it was just so important to have her narrating. This is somebody who the media have done such a good job on really reducing her voice and I suppose in many ways mocking it. And it felt really important that the key takeaway from this film be that you hear her in an uninterrupted 90 minutes film, which is really able to like look back and reflect from this contemporary point of view on all of the events that took place during these 5 years. So it was amazing to be able to actually get that interview. And she's so, reflective and clear as a bell. And yeah, I just thought she had lots of fantastic insights, really. So we were delighted to be able to get that. But and that's why as well. Um, there's no talking heads. We didn't use an obstock approach at all with this film. It's very much well, it was all woven together as like a tapestry because we wanted to keep you in the era, but for you to hear her reflections from today. So it was a conscious decision to keep you in those 5 years as the tensions building and building throughout that, throughout what happened. I wanted you to feel the intensity with her as she's then telling you what happened. So yeah, we made a decision not to do any in camera uh, commentary at all, and just keep it all VO and archive footage, really, and a little bit that we shot ourselves, but mostly archive.
How involved was she in the documentary?
Well, basically, her involvement was the interview, and we obviously were working closely with her team. But really, apart from the interview, because it's archived, we didn't need to involve Sinead in it much past that at all. So yeah, that's really it. Yeah.
How does she feel about the documentary? Has she seen it?
We don't know if she's seen it, and we certainly haven't wanted to push it on her this year, given all that she's going through. But we do know that she's very supportive of it.
Oh, good.
She's been posting lots on Facebook about it for the last 9 months actually. And yes, I would hope that yeah, she's happy with the response. There's a hell of a lot of love,
Yeah,
gathering around the world for, so it's certainly kickstarted a lot of that, which hopefully will reach her and she'll feel.
there's a weird thing with artists I know who never watch their own documentaries about themselves.
Sure, I wouldn't want to.
I think I'm an egomaniac. I'd want to see it and have demand final cut.
Have you watched your 10-minute one?
Oh yeah. I'll send you a file. I'll send you a Blu-ray right now. I'll get my courier around. Warren Ellis came over to screen his Dirty Free documentary, which is incredible.
Brilliant.
And we were at the hotel and just about to get in the Uber, and he was like, "Wait, is the documentary any good?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's amazing." And he's like, "I've never bothered to watch it."
Wow.
And then, but it was really emotional because then he watched it that night because he came in and he's about to sit down, and I was like, "Warren, we got a seat for you here." And he's like, "No, I'm going to go to the back. If it's shit, I'll leave." And he did, okay. But he stuck for it. And then one of his bandmates messaged the next day saying, "Hey, thanks for showing the documentary. I really appreciate it. Is the doc any good? I've not watched it either." And I was like,
"Oh my goodness. Wow." Yeah, I mean, I can totally understand why you wouldn't want to see.
Maybe it's the same way with actors who can't watch their own films and stuff. Yeah. I know a lot of actors say I get a headache watching myself 20 foot high on a screen, which is probably quite alien, but absolutely. I can get that.
I mean, I find it horrifying enough listening to myself do things like this. So I can only imagine sitting through a whole film would be absolutely horrific. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot of docs that, as you say, that have been made and people choose not to watch them. And I think fair dues, to be honest.
How did you go about piecing together the footage? You've got so much good archive material. How was that, pulling that all together, especially those early rehearsal tapes?
Yeah. No, we find some real gold nuggets actually, and quite late in the process. Well, because we funded it the way we did, just getting little pots from the national funders, as we went along, one of the first things that we did was bring in our archive producer, Jo Stones, who is quite phenomenal actually. And she just went on a deep dive and I suppose uncovered everything that there is. And bizarrely, with Sinead, there's not masses of archive, which I find very strange. No, No, there's not. There's only a select few concerts, quite a lot of TV, Q&As, appearances, very little B-roll. No, it was surprising, and I don't really understand. We still never really got to the bottom of it, but there's not masses. But then what did happen was when we started to talk to our contributors, and many of them are first-hand eyewitness accounts. Um, we talked to them and they then sent us off on wild goose chases. Quite often they'd say, oh, there's this guy, you know, Mikey, who's got like a box of tapes, I'm sure, in his cupboard somewhere in America. Reach out to him to see if he'll help you out. So we went on all these wild chases to try and uncover, this archive that we hadn't managed to, just, yeah, this, I suppose, B-roll of what we were looking for, as opposed to the well seen and documented concerts and TV shows. And yeah, I mean, that really was when it got really exciting. For viewers who have seen it, we have or sorry, for listeners who've seen it, there's the wedding scene, which is amazing. Sinead O'Connor singing as a 14-year-old at her music teacher's wedding in Dublin in the early 80s. The videographer sadly didn't film her because he wouldn't have known quite who was there at that point. But he recorded her singing, and there's a shot of her walking across the car park, and it's very obviously her. As a 14-year-old girl in rainy Ireland, bits like that were phenomenal. And as you mentioned, the rehearsal footage, 1985, Sinead with hair, singing with this band that had been put together to support her find her voice as she's starting to write The Line of the Cobra. I mean, just little bits like that were just phenomenal. So exciting to find. Yeah, there's definitely a few, but a lot of that stuff came quite late. So we'd already edited maybe 80% of the film, and then these nuggets would arrive, and we had to reshuffle everything again to try and squeeze them in. But I'm glad we did.
There's an amazing scene of her singing. Is that a Cole Porter song? She's singing with in London with the drag queens. That's fucking incredible. That looks so great.
It is. Yes, absolutely. It's beautiful. But that was Lee Barry's club.
Oh.
What's it called? Kinky Galinky. Yes, it was his club. And because John Mabry and it's like John Mabry, Jerry Stafford, they were all good friends with Lee Bowery too. So John Mabry's obviously one of the key image makers that worked with Sinead. I think he did 12 of her videos. All of them are stunning. And Jerry Stafford did like the styling and creative direction. So she had this amazing team around her. And so she would have gone to the Lee Bowery nights a fair bit. And that footage that you mentioned is her performing at the club. And it's just amazing to feel the love in the room, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's just so comfortable and talks about having 100 daddies,
yes.
in this amazing community. And yeah, I think it's really, really beautiful. That was actually shot by Dick Joe, the incredible artist. So he shot all of the Kinky Galinky nights, and he shot that on 5 cameras.
Wow.
Must have been 1990 or 1991. So yeah, and he'd actually been a tutor of mine at the RCA. And I'd remembered that he'd shot footage, he's famous for footage of that era. So it was, that was a fantastic goose chase. And I just emailed, it's like, Dick, what have you got? And he had to go through his incredible archive, which is infamously dense. And he managed to hoik that out, and we were able to digitize it. Stunning.
Yeah, that's such great footage. And again, the look is incredible. Isn't it just like a coat, a bra, but then a tinny and a cigarette?
Oh yeah, it's a kind of a red stripe.
Yeah,
and a flag. Yeah.
But with the most perfect vocal and rendition ever.
Yeah,
just the whole combination is just kind of what makes her so great.
Yeah, you do something too, isn't it?
You got an amazing section where you break down the "Nothing Compares to You" video, and at the end of spoilers, at the end of a film, you mention the Prince estate refused to grant permission.
Yeah.
You made such a great scene and a great sequence for the video without using the audio track. How did you overcome that obstacle?
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly a late in the day obstacle, but anyway, yeah, we had reached out and sadly were denied the license to the song. So we had quite the creative challenge on how to keep the narrative flow of that scene, which is essentially, because so many of the videos that we have used in our film are kind of reworked as biographical beats. Like Troy talks about the horrific childhood that she had, and then Nothing Compares to You was to revisit, I suppose, the loss of her mother and the pain that she felt because of that. And she's always very openly talked about the tear. That is so infamous now from Nothing Compared to You from the video. Is when as when she thinks about her mother, and that's when she was thinking. I can't speak. When she was shooting that video, she thought about her mother, and that's what caused the tear. And we wanted to explore that a bit further with her, because really, um, if Troy earlier on in the film is about the anger she felt about what happened to her, Nothing Compares to You is about the
Hmm.
sadness she feels about the loss of her mother and that relationship. So you can bet your boots we weren't not going to include it. We were, it was key, as a key moment, key part of the film, really. So yeah, we just had this creative challenge to work out how we could keep all of that intact. And we worked with the film's composers, the Buckley sisters, and John Reynolds, and we had to together try and put a track together that would be a good homage to the song and keep you there without using even a second of it. So it was certainly a challenge. But what's been really interesting since the film's come out is that so many people that have seen it have said that even just by watching that video, seeing that, because we had the rushes for the film, which was, for Nothing Compares to You, which is amazing to have. They said just from even watching her in the video, they could hear the song,
Yeah,
even if you
I
don't
felt
hear it.
that
It's that
completely.
iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there, and you can hear it, and that was a huge relief to hear, given that we weren't able to actually include it.
Yeah, all the outtakes and unused footage was amazing because that whole video is like a masterclass in close up and the human face. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's John Mabry again, and he talks about it really beautifully, being that it wasn't his direction, it wasn't the cinematography, it was all her, and you really can see that and feel that, can't you, when you see that
Yeah,
scene?
the
And
connection
just
through the
the
lens is
look,
just
it's
incredible.
phenomenal.
She should have acted more.
I know.
I always go on this podcast about people, actors' faces and how there's a certain type of face I don't see in cinema
Mm,
anymore. Like I want more people looking like Sissy Spacek or Shelley Duvall or kind of really interesting Warren
nice.
Oates or Harry Dean Stanton. And
Hmm.
I was like, this is a face for the movies right here.
Hmm.
She could be an amazing character actor.
I
And
know.
obviously she'd be a natural. You can just tell she'd
Yeah,
totally bring it every time.
she did. She did do bits. She did. She played Emily Bronte in one of the Wuthering Heights films. I can't remember which. Must have been the Juliette Binoche one. There's a flash of her running up a hill dressed as Emily Bronte, and then obviously in our film we talk about Hush by Baby, which was this quite iconic feminist feature that came out in Ireland in the late 80s, all about abortion. So she had a key part in that and did the soundtrack for it.
Could you pick out what was your biggest challenge in the movie? What was your hardest scene to cut together or
I mean, there were so many challenges, to be honest. I think just even getting us up and running is probably the biggest. And then COVID was a huge worry because we were 2 years into the project at that point. And, the archive houses, given that it was such a archive heavy film, the archive houses literally shut their doors for probably 6, 7 months. You couldn't even, like, nobody could get in them, never mind get anything out of them, even files, so that was certainly a challenge. The issues around licensing was a challenge. But I suppose the key thing for me was just making sure that we were able to tell the version of the story that I really wanted to tell. So it was constantly trying to make sure that we could stay independent and keep on track with making sure that, this film, the final version was exactly as I intended. But I really feel like it is, which is a relief because I'm sure that doesn't happen all the time. I think we were very lucky that we were able to stay indie the whole way through it.
Absolutely, yeah. You can totally. It's kind of funny when you see music documentaries and then you're like, well, the estate was involved, so it was a very sanitized version or something, but this was completely.
Yeah, I just feel like it's I think it certainly is raw. And what's just been fascinating, obviously launched was it now 9 months ago at Sundance. It's been really interesting to watch how it's being received because certainly when we made it, there's a big dose of my own fury as an Irish woman, which I'm sure is palpable when you watch it. But what's been fascinating is screening. It really has screened around the world now, but it's having. I just keep getting all of these amazing, flashing-eyed teenagers coming up to me at the end of it, just saying like, "What? What? Who was she? And what? Like they just can't believe
Yeah.
that they didn't actually know who she was. They'd heard about her, of course, because she's still known for that song, but they had been told either by their parents or by the media that she was bad or she'd done something bad. And when they see this film, which hopefully is a reclamation, I think they are very perturbed and but also very galvanized. And particularly in America, all of these young ones with dealing with what they're having to contend with over there at the minute. Um, it seems to have almost become a bit of a call to action. There's a lot of very angry young ones coming up saying, they also feel that, feeling like they're hugely inspired by her and, want to also, use their voices and go out and, yeah, just speak truth to power and all of those cliches. But it's true, they want to be able to use their voices properly and to be heard. And
Absolutely.
my God, we need
Yeah.
thousands of Sineads out in the world right now doing that.
That's a perfect note to end on. Congratulations again on the documentary.
Well, look, it's lovely to talk to you.
You too.
Thanks a million.
Boom. That was me and Kathryn. I'm really excited as to the impact this doc might have. And it's one of those ones where you think you know the story, but you don't. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you to my producer, Flynn Rodham, Joshua Eustace, aka Telephone Tel Aviv, for the beautiful music. And you guys for listening. We'll speak soon.